Hello and welcome to the Next Minute podcast. Slightly different format if you're able to watch on YouTube. But I've got myself a little camera now. Thought I'd put the face to the podcast. So today is probably going to be touching on some, I don't want to say sensitive topics, maybe awkward ones. And it was an episode I was debating whether to do or not. And obviously I've decided to do it. It's not really, wouldn't say it's like a taboo subject, but just a little awkward because I know my friends and family listen. Obviously on the episode we talk a lot about grief, mental health, and we kind of focus on that side of things. This does tie into it. Probably say it's one of my more negative coping mechanisms. But there is, well, no, I've done a few mental health first aid courses and courses around mental health. I've been able to understand it a little bit more. And when this does happen, I know that my mental health is taking a hit and I'm not in a great place at that time. And I've started to realise that over the last probably six plus months. We're on episode 3 now. We're absolutely flying. We've got a few guests lined up, which I'm excited to get on. That was another reason for purchasing the camera, so now I can do the video calls, get them on this app I'm using, Riverside, which is going to be, this one's more of a trial, just see how it goes. And I might put an counter on there. I've realised from doing this in the last podcast that I just say a lot. So keep your ears open for that. I'm going to be very conscious of it now as well. So, yeah, what I wanted to talk about today was, I suppose it was an addiction. Well, I know it was an addiction. And it's not drugs or alcohol or substances, anything like that. It was to dating apps. Something that I've spoke to people a lot. I've always made a joke of it, made light of it. Probably not been as honest with those people about what was actually going on when I was on those apps. It wasn't necessarily looking for a partner as such. And I suppose when you're setting those up, that is kind of like the premise. You're looking for a partner, and the people who are talking to you are expecting that that's what you're wanting as well. But I was going on these apps to combat loneliness, which is why I know when I'm talking about it being an addiction and a negative coping mechanism, it was something that I was using as a tool to try and speak to an adult, really. Obviously, as soon as the kids go to bed, I'm on my own. I've got a couple of dogs now. They keep me company, but again, can't really talk to them. Well, you can. They just don't talk back. They're both asleep anyway. But yeah, I kind of use the dating apps, and when I refer to them as the plural, I was on about 5 or 6. At my worst, and I would start talking to people, and I would, go in with that premise that I was looking for a relationship, but all I was really looking for was just someone to talk to. Sometimes it was just for that evening, and then that the morning after I thought it's not working out, or I'm not interested. And as harsh as it sounds, that person had kind of served a purpose for me at that point. It is very selfish, but I got what I wanted because I wasn't as lonely that night. And I talked about guilt a lot in the last episode, and that is massive. That guilt comes with it a lot because I'm not that kind of person who'd. Oh, I didn't. Oh, I must be, but I didn't think I was that kind of person who'd kind of lead somebody on. And that's why I know I was in a low place when I was doing it. I've not done it for a while now. must be a good few months, maybe six months plus. But it was at a point where I would be spending money on them, mainly just so I can see who's liked me, so I can then start a conversation with that person without just constantly swiping. A lot of the times it would be people I weren't even attracted to. It was just somebody who liked me. I could see they'd like me because I paid for the subscription, and then I could just start a conversation with them straight away. Sometimes it went on for a little while. Sometimes I would meet up with a person if I thought there was maybe something there. But usually when I did meet up with somebody, then guilt hit me again. Didn't want, just because I didn't feel like things were going to go anywhere. Because I still had that feeling that I was kind of like used goods. I wasn't, worthy. For some reason, probably the first time I've admitted that, but I didn't feel like I was worthy of, being loved by, not even loved, just liked by somebody else in that sort of capacity. And one thing Taylor always said to me was, obviously she didn't know she was dying, but she always promised me that she would die. Well, she always made me promise that she would die before me. Obviously, when she was talking about that, you kind of laugh it off. You can see why. Or I can see why now that she would want that, but obviously she would have wanted it, when we're pretty much in our 80s, 90s, we're on our deathbeds anyway, together. But she always said, as long as I grieve for her for at least 6 months, then she's okay with me finding someone else. Well, it doesn't work like that. It does for a lot of people. A lot of people get there. I think they refer to it as the second chapter, or the chapter 2, in like the widow world. But it doesn't necessarily work like that, like I said, because when you do meet someone, you do feel like that guilt is always there. Sometimes you can learn to live with it and sort of cope with it. And then eventually you probably do file it away because you know that they would want you to be happy. But it's always in the back of your mind, particularly early on when you start talking to someone or you meet up with someone. So there's quite a few instances where I did meet up with a few people, just went for like a walk or something, and then it was just kind of didn't. I don't think I ever ghosted anyone. I'm pretty sure I haven't. And if I have been listening to this, then I'm sorry. But there's a good chance you're not. But yeah, ghosting is just one thing. Isn't something I'd do. So the term ghosting is obviously when you just stop talking to someone. You don't give them a reason or an explanation. You just kind of gone. But I kind of felt like when I did meet up with him that I didn't want it to go any further. And like I said before, it served a purpose for me because it did combat that loneliness. And I knew it started to get into a problem, like I said, where I was on 4 or 5 different apps. Before anybody says I didn't go on Grindr. But I was on about 4 or 5 different apps, and I was paying for subscriptions on all of those. And if you've used the apps before, you know like the minimum subscription's at least £15 or something like that. So that was just for a week. So I think I was paying at my worst probably well over £100 for these apps a month, and I didn't stay on them for that long. Sometimes I forget a few contacts, I come off them, but yeah, when I started to get on them, it was literally paying hundreds of pounds a month, and it was literally just to talk to people, just to combat that loneliness. And it wasn't necessarily that I wanted a specific person to talk to, or like a friend or a male. It was I wanted that, like a woman to talk to. I wanted that presence in my life, but not necessarily in a romantic way. It was just nice having that someone female to talk to, somebody a little bit different, but you don't have to be, your typical manly self. And like I said, just kind of like joking and putting things off and stuff. So it was hard. Like I said, the guilt around it was just enormous, and it was I think it was depression. That kind of triggered it. I know my lowest point was around August, September last year. So around my brother's wedding, I couldn't afford to go. So I'd got a credit card to fund to go there, and then I just got myself in like this big panic, this big sort of anxious panic about being able to afford it, being able to pay it off. The anxiety of like taking the kids abroad and all that kind of stuff, and it just built up and built up and built up, and then eventually, I just kind of collapsed on myself. I got myself that worked up that I started, like I said, that was the worst point where I was on these dating apps. That was, like I said, a negative coping mechanism. There was the credit card. I just racked up £8,000 of debt on that, like almost immediately. And that was just buying stuff for the kids. So that's one thing that I know when I'm feeling guilty. My go-to is just spending on the kids. I've done it a few times where it's just been like completely ridiculous amounts. Like I said, this time it was £8,000 on a credit card. To be fair, they've not really got anything to show for it. Just a couple of beds, some toys, just bits like that. That was nothing like, mega or anything that's gonna sort of stick around. I think I bought like a Nerf Gatling gun. It's pretty awesome, to be fair. I've never put the batteries in because I'm scared of Cole getting hold of that. But it just racked up £8,000 of debt. Got myself really worked up. Didn't tell anyone. Told people. Obviously, I couldn't afford to go to the wedding. I was gutted. To be honest, it really affected me, that, and it wasn't anyone or anything like that, or people pressuring me to go. Everyone said, if you can't go, you can't go. There was never any like massive pressure on me to get the credit card or to go or anything like that. But I got myself that worked up that it just kind of, like I said, I just collapsed on myself. Racked up the debt, racked up fortune on these dating apps, talking to strangers for a bit. Then telling them it's not worked out. And I just didn't really know what to do. I felt like I needed someone to speak to. I didn't even speak to the guys at AMC about it, at his man club, just because, or not at the time, just because I felt like, and I, to be fair, I've opened up to them since, but you're kind of embarrassed that you're doing it. You're on these apps and you're talking to people, and one, you've got really no intention of things going anywhere. Don't get me wrong, I met quite a few, really amazing people on those apps, to be fair, but it was never anything, or a lot of the time I wouldn't say there wasn't any romance in there. There was a couple that, I thought there could have been something with, but then anxiety, guilt, that kind of stuff kind of taught me out of it. And eventually, like I said, just called things off with everybody I spoke to. Over the course of probably over the last two years, I've been sort of on and off with the apps, and it got to like a really bad spot. I think this might have been November. I've got the email somewhere, but I ended up writing an email to these apps asking to ban me from them, to ban my emails. So I sent them the 2 or 3 different emails that I've got, and I pleaded with them, absolutely pleaded with them to ban me. I explained that I was struggling mentally. Explained I wasn't really treating the people fair on there. Like I said, I'd apologised to anybody who's listening who, I did talk to, apologise. I apologised to them at the time, but it's not enough, because obviously they've got on there with the impression that I'm going to be, looking for something. And that, like I said, the guilt on that kind of hits me. But yeah, I wrote this email to the different, customer services, or whatever you want to call it, for these apps. Not one of them got back to me. Oh no, one of them did. It was just about disabling my account, but not obviously banning me. Like I said, I explained about the mental health situation. I explained I wasn't really treating the people fair on there, and really that I think I might have just said that, like, I was just an awful person, and I shouldn't be anywhere near these apps. They didn't really acknowledge, the content of the email. But that happens every now and then. It still does, when that loneliness spikes. I'll download the apps again. Probably pay for a subscription. And again, like I said, it's just to talk to someone female, who doesn't know me. I suppose that's one of the big benefits, is that it's just a complete stranger, can not be someone else, but they don't know what's happened. They don't know, all the ins and outs and stuff like that. So I suppose it's just taking me to someone who's just not aware, who can kind of treat me as the Sean before, the Sean that's not a widow, I suppose. That's pretty hard to say. But yeah, but then, man, I had some horror stories on there. Quite a few people, as soon as you get talked to them, and if you exchange numbers, I've had quite a lot who've just turned around and asked me for money for, like, gas, electric. And I work in the industry, so instead of getting £5 to top up the gas and electric, they just get sound advice, and how they can reduce the bills going forward. So I wasn't horrible to all of them. But yeah, I had one woman who was disputing the death of Taylor. She was kind of saying, "Oh, your story doesn't line up." So this was one person who'd talked to for a little while, like a few days. No plans to meet up or anything, but I ended up just opening up to her because I thought I could. And then I mentioned, like, what had happened. Mentioned about it being in COVID, and then she started to, like, dispute the timeline and things like that. And then I started not arguing, but kind of like pleading my case, going, I was explaining things, and it got to a point where I was like, why am I doing it? Why am I explaining this to a complete stranger? I don't have to be on that app. I don't have to talk to this person. I know it's not going to go any further than, talking. So I'm going to put myself through that. And that was probably one of the first points where I felt like I did have a problem. I felt like it was quite a toxic environment being on those apps. Not always, but mainly from my side as well, from that going in with false pretenses, I suppose. But we'd always talk about it quite a lot. They call it the widow's fire. A lot of people just kind of say it's just like an increased, horniness. But I think it's a lot more than that. I think it's that because you've had someone there that you've loved, that you've loved being around. And, it's just that like, even if you're just walking past each other in the hallway, or cooking in the kitchen, you do those, like, little gentle touches, those little, like, taps on the arm, or little smack on the butt, whatever it is. It's the little stuff, but it's the big stuff that you miss. Just those little things. Like, I'd give anything like cooking downstairs, just to, just to sort of like walk past, and I don't know, Taylor's getting a pan from the cupboard or something, and she'll kind of like jokingly bump into me or pass me a spoon to go and like taste the bolognese or something like that. And then just like the little cuddles and stuff. And I think it's all that the small stuff that when you're in it, you think it's like the small little things, but when you lose that, you realise how big those moments are. And I think that widow's fire is that intense longing to get that feeling back, that feeling of being loved and wanted. I think that's one thing I've really struggled with. It's just kind of feeling like you're wanted again. But at the same time, like, I don't want to be wanted by anyone else, which sounds awful. I have dated since Taylor, and loved that relationship and stuff, but it didn't work out. But I had it for a little while, and I was, insanely happy again. And it's probably since then that all this has kind of come on, just needing that. I suppose it is a need. That need to be wanted and loved by someone. It's obviously, you have it from the kids and stuff, but it's completely different. Just having like, just someone who wants to come over to you at the end of the night and just sort of put their head on your shoulder, or ask you to play with their hair and stuff like that. That's like I said, the little things that you miss. It is. Yeah. So I think when my loneliness hits, I end up on these apps, and it's kind of that I'm looking for, just a distraction from that, somebody to talk to who can take my mind off for a little bit. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to bed on my own. And yeah, it is tough. But I don't get like this all the time. I feel like it's coming on now. I think that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I really wasn't planning on doing this anytime soon. But I think that's sort of been building up. That's probably what I want to do, and hopefully getting it out there helps. But yeah, just a weird one. Really, really weird. Because like I said, you kind of, you want it, but you don't at the same time. But definitely miss it. So we'll probably call that a day for episode 3. Wasn't expecting it to hit me as much as it did. If you're watching, probably on YouTube or something like that, just leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what the quality of the video was. If my eyes were darting around everywhere, it's 'cause I've got notes over here and I've got the camera over there, so I can sort of see myself on that side, but I've got some like notes and prompts over there. To be fair, I haven't really used them. But yeah, let me know what you thought. Hopefully the sound has been fine as well. Like I said, this has been more of a trial with the video recording, just to try and see what it's like when I've got guests on, what the quality is, what the setup's like. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Obviously, give us a like, follow, share, subscribe, and all that stuff on all the socials, on Instagram, Facebook. And obviously, if you're following on like Podbean or any of the other, just make sure you're subscribing on there as well. Leave us a little comment. Thanks as always for listening and watching if you're watching. We'll be back soon. So we'll be back in a week's time. Hopefully with a guest on as well. That should be fun. So if you take anything away from this, as always, just remember, you can get through the next minute.